everybody, everybody, well. Oh yeah, everybody, well. Oh, everybody, well. Everybody,
The following program contains scenes some viewers may find disturbing.
So yeah, Weird Wednesday, from beyond the terror of the grave of the wonders, things that you could never possibly imagine, bizarre realities you could never truly see, spooky poopy bullshit that you just throw my way. Welcome to Weird Wednesday. Weird Wednesday is a little stream segment I'm bringing back from its grave, much like the weirdness. I always thought that aliens were cool. I like aliens and weird shit like that, so you know, I figured maybe we could do a stream segment every so often where I look at weird paranormal or alien bullshit. Where Bigfoot is your dad or something. I don't know. I'm not your mom. I'm not your dad. I'm not your dad, mom. Your dom, if you will. So yeah, Weird Wednesday. It lives in my heart and in your hands. Why don't people understand my creation? Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that I am somewhat of a skeptical person, that I'm going to be a little Johnny come shit cereal, maybe, possibly. It is my nature. I don't want to be, but I feel like I have to. And viewer discretion is advised. This may be, it might get weird, literally, hee ho. So yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, Weird Wednesdays. Come on down to Weird Wednesdays. So I am from Missouri. This is not a thing. Yipsy poopsie poopsie. There we go. And we'll be reacting to T Story Time. Weird Missouri Folklore. This is by T Story Time on YouTube. You can check it out, y'all. Check it out. Check it out, y'all. Check it out. I don't know why I'm doing that. Let's make this look a little bit better, shall we, on my end? I can do you. Ooh, girl, I want you, but I know that I don't need you, girl. Ooh, I'm down to find out. I want you, girl. Ooh, I want. Know that I don't need you, girl. Ooh, I'm down to find out. You know what? The way I had it looked the best. Yeah, there we go. That looks probably as good as it's gonna look on my stream. Just a little, yeah, there we go. There we go. So let us begin, shall we? Let's begin with Mr. T or
that
Miss
possibly
T or
gave
there.
last rites to aliens. I've got to say, reading about this one was
Last
one of the
rites to
most unique
aliens, you say?
experiences I've had.
Fascinating.
Anyhow, if you want more weird folklore, I'm your guy, and I charge
Okay, Mr. T.
$0 to anyone for this service.
Okay, Mr.
Except,
T,
I guess
or
for the internet you use to
MBT.
watch my channel. All I ever ask in return
I am
is
from
that you
Missouri.
like this video, subscribe, and comment.
Give me
Keep this
weird
channel
shit.
growing and keep telling YouTube, hey YouTube, this guy's all right. With that,
Yeah,
thank you so much for
let's
dropping
do
by,
that.
and
Let's do
come with me,
T's
and
story
let's
time,
explore
weird
some of
Missouri
Missouri's
folklore.
Weirdest lore.
Let's do it. Birds do it. I forgot. I forgot something. You know what I forgot, chat? The Wibble Man, the Wibble Child, the Internet Wibble Boy. I forgot my V2 buddy. I'm a professional, in air quotes. Quality stream, quality stream, quality stream. Okay, let's go. It's Missouri. Skidmore, Missouri. What happened there? Why is it... Okay, Skidmore, Missouri keeps its secrets. Okay, fair enough. What's this about?
If you know this channel well, you probably know true crime isn't really my thing. But when
I'm not a big
small
true
town in
crime
Missouri
guy
kills
either.
a dude in broad daylight on Main Street, and for the next 4 decades or so, the unanimous opinion on the matter is, nope, nobody knows who.
I want to make sure I heard them correctly. When they said what they said there.
If you know this channel well, you probably know true crime isn't really my thing. But when
I
a
can't
small
yap
town in
over him.
Missouri kills a dude in broad daylight on
Okay.
Main Street, and for the next 4
I
decades
wanted to
or
make
so,
sure that
the
I heard that
unanimous opinion
correctly.
on the
I had to
matter is,
rewind.
Nope, nobody knows who did it, even though the ones saying that were part of the angry mob that, without any doubt, did it.
But why an
It's
angry
the sort
mob?
of thing that absolutely gets my attention.
But why?
This is the story of Kinrex McElroy, the man.
That
who
is not a
Skidmore,
real name.
Missouri
Your name is
collected
like
citizens
Bob
years
Johnson or
ago.
something.
And while I don't
That is the
typically
most
condone
Bob
vigilante
Johnson man on
justice,
this planet.
I think by the end of this story, you might feel
That is the
same.
most Bob Johnson
Kinrex
man on this
McElroy, To
planet.
be clear, doesn't have an origin story that's anything to write home about. He
Oh,
was
I wanted
born
to
in
know the
June
secret
of
origin story of
1934
Kenneth
as the
Rex
15th of 16 children,
McElroy.
to Tony and Mabel McElroy, 2
children!
poor tenant farmers who drifted between Kansas and Missouri's Ozarks, and
Oh.
eventually settled in a tiny farm town named Skidmore, Missouri. And frankly, there's not much else to know about Kin's upbringing.
Yep,
Only
that's
anecdotes that being
Ozark,
one of 16
in
children,
Missouri.
he
All
worked
right,
a
that's
lot and
Ozarks.
didn't
I've
get
been
much
there.
attention, and that at one point he cracked his skull falling off
Lot
of
of
a
sad-
hay wagon, and
sad,
therefore got a steel
small
plate
dying
in his
towns.
head. Something
It's
that
depressing,
admittedly,
really.
I don't think is actually verifiable.
Especially in
but
southern
is
Illinois,
often
there's a lot of
posited as the reason for his behavior.
small dying
What we
towns,
can
and that's
verify,
depressing.
However, is that Kin dropped out of school at 15, and that while he couldn't read or write very well, he did learn to shoot, to hunt, and to drive like hell.
Shoot
down
and drive
long,
like
dark
hunting.
roads.
I'm
Skills,
sorry.
as it turns out, that translates well into being a career criminal. Now, in terms of crime, Kin's original pastimes were stealing grain, gasoline, liquor, and knickknacks.
Sounds
Basically,
like
if it
he
wasn't
would be
nailed
fun to
down on
hang
your
out with
farm,
at
he'd
least.
steal it. But eventually, he got into something more lucrative: cattle and hog rustling.
Hog
Something
rustling.
that made Nottoway County, Missouri, lead the state in
Hog
terms of
rustling.
livestock theft. And he wasn't subtle. He'd allegedly show up at bars. Most
This guy
prominently
sounds
the
like the
D&D
villain of like
tavern, with
a
piles of
cowboy
cash,
westerner,
and he'd pull it out in front of the ranchers.
but in like
he was allegedly
almost
stealing
modern
from.
times.
He was making it clear he didn't believe these folks could touch him. And speaking of people not touching him, Ken got married for the first time at 18 in 1952.
First
to a
time
woman
implies
named
multiple
Alita
times, though.
Holland. This only lasted until 1958, as he couldn't hold down a normal job. In 1958, he married again to one Sharon, had 5 kids, and divorced her by 1964. And then he developed a pastime that he's infamous for: pursuing junior high-aged girls and scouting them out, I kid you not, at playgrounds. Yeah, he was a total piece of crap. And in the early 1970s, Kin began stalking a young woman named Trina McLeod, who was about 12 at the time he started this. And yeah, there's no easy way to put this. he forced himself on her.
Oh,
By
no!
the time she was 14, he got her pregnant.
Oh,
And
no!
to make matters worse, when her family objected to
Oh,
whatever
no.
twisted arrangement he was trying to force on
Don't
them,
like that. Nope.
Ken responded by shooting their dog and
Don't like
burning
that.
down
This
their
is not the
home.
weird,
We
funny,
wonder
haha,
what he said
aliens
about
touched
wishing
my
for the
booty
worst for this
thing that
guy.
I was coming
Anyhow,
for here,
briefly
chat.
leaving behind Ken's affinity for literal children, he was a horrific criminal in many ways other than just thievery.
I don't
The
like
worst part
this
about
man.
Ken,
I'm
debatably,
glad
though,
he's
was
dead.
that he had a good enough attorney that he could offend about as much as he wanted. See, in 1972, in a serious cattle rustling case, Ken hired Kansas City attorney Richard Gene McFadden. He struck a deal with Ken.
This guy looks like
For
the corrupt...
$5,000 cash per felony charge, McFadden would essentially keep Ken out of prison, something that worked for roughly a decade.
One moment.
As
I need
such,
to
in
go back
June
to this
of
picture of this gentleman.
1973, when Ken was in with a $1,000 cash per felony charge, McFadden
That man looks like he is the corrupt senator from, like, the South that would sound like Foghorn Leghorn in some, like, TV drama from the 50s or something. Now, I'll tell you here, boy, we do the things down differently here in southern Missouri. My part of Missouri says Missouri because we are not godless savages. I'm sorry, people from my part of the state that say Missouri. Missouri. It's Missouri. It sounds like misery for a reason, people.
That worked for roughly a decade.
What fur?
As
Huh?
such, in
Oh, wait,
June
I
of
said fur. Never
1973,
mind.
when Ken was
I do
indicted
say
on arson,
warsh
assault, and
very
statutory
rarely,
rape
though.
charges
That'll come
tied
out
to
of me.
Trina, Ken was simply
That
released
warsh
on a
will come out of my
$25,000
mouth, so
bail, and then
I'll say
followed
fur
Trina
and
their
bin.
child to the
I've
foster
been doing
center
that.
in Maryville, where she was kept,
Maryville? I've been
actively
there.
stalking the family that
There's
was
not a
still
lot there, but I've been
16
there.
days after the
I think
baby
I
was
went there to
born,
poop
Trina,
once.
and also Ken's
Yeah, I
third
think I
wife,
went there to
Alice,
get gas and
actually
pooped.
fled together back to
I think I've
Trina's
been to
parents'
Maryville
home,
several
and
times to
Ken,
get gas
of
and
course,
poop.
tracked them down again. And
Thank
brought
you,
them back.
Maryville.
Then, while Trina's family was away from home once, Ken actually again shot their replacement dog and burned down their
Oh, this
replacement
guy's just
house.
a mega
And
twat.
then, on top of all of this, Ken divorced Alice and presumably forced Trina to marry him to eliminate the state's star witness in the aforementioned indictment, given spouses generally can't be compelled to testify against one another. And as such, these charges never stopped. And then, in 19...
Yeah, again, these guys look like characters from like a movie, like a Western movie about the corrupt politician and his chuckle fuck son. Like his dipshit son in this corrupt politician video.
In 1976, Ken moved on from shooting dogs to human adults.
Oh, it's the same guy. Well, I stand by what I said.
Farmer Romaine Henry for firing guns on Henry's property, and Ken responded by firing a gun at Henry, hitting him in the stomach with a shotgun.
Well, I can see why the people of this town are like, yeah, fuck him. We're not telling who killed him.
But lo and
Fuck 'em.
behold, this case didn't even make it to trial, as the judge's barn got burnt down, and someone,
This
say in
guy's
quotes,
just asking
was
to
stalking
create a
members of the jury.
superhero.
Further, McFadden dug up some dirt on old farmer Henry, ruined his credibility, and then Ken just walked.
This guy's...
So, yeah, Ken had a pattern with his...
This
something
Ken
like
guy
21
is this
separate
close to
felony
have created a
indictments. He'd commit
superhero.
theft, arson, assault.
If he had, like,
cruelty,
radioactivity,
rustle
and
some
some of
cattle
the
or
people
something.
might have been
And
superheroes to go
every
after
single
him.
time, his lawyer would get
He's
him
some,
out of
like,
trouble.
just...
And Ken
He's not
helped
even
in his own
Justice
way
League. He's
by
like
interrogating
Batman level or
witnesses.
like Pulp
Jurors
Fiction
got
villain.
rattlesnakes in their mailboxes.
Yeah, that's
People
very
found their
pulp
barns
villain
burnt
kind of
down.
attitude.
And strangely, through it all, Ken genuinely had a reputation of sometimes sort of being charming. To half the town, he was basically that neighbor you had a beer with, and shot the shit with, so to speak. At least until he wanted your cows, or your daughter. And this brings us to the incident that was Ken's end, which, fittingly, started over something that I'm sure he never would have expected.
That dog.
Brought him down.
That dog.
A candy bar. In the summer of 1980, one of Ken's kids was accused of stealing a candy bar from a grocery
I
store.
don't think
run
Missouri's
by
had a
one
grocery
70-year-old
store like that
Ernest
in
Bo Bowenkamp. And
since, like, the
Ken, predictably,
40s.
didn't take this so well.
Or
So he started to
50s.
stalk Bo and his family.
Even
Something that
rural
escalated
Missouri,
to
even
Ken
parts where
shooting Bo
I've
in the
been
neck
to
with a
rural Missouri
shotgun.
and I don't like to
Again,
shit on it
something
because
that Bo
it's
survived,
they're just people, you know.
leading
At the
to
end of the
Ken
day, they're just
actually
trying to live their
shockingly
lives, and
being arrested
unfortunately,
for
the
attempted
world's giving
murder.
them a fucking
Now,
turd
Ken
sandwich.
didn't go down easy, mind you. he was released on bail, and while out, he harassed
I really do
everyone
feel,
connected to
you know,
Bo,
camaraderie
including the
with them.
Church
You
of
know,
Christ
they're
minister.
just,
However, when the trial
there's no
finally
jobs, there's no
started in June of
opportunity, and they're just
1981, there
up
was a
shit
twist.
creek without a paddle. Who
Ken
am I
went
to,
up
you know, or
against
they're
a
just
young
living their life in the
prosecutor, 3
community that
years
they've
out of
been
law school,
born and
who would
raised in,
finally
and, you know,
sort
they're
of
just
do it,
happy there.
named David Baird. And as such, Ken's tried and true plan finally didn't work.
Okay. I'm sorry if I offend people. I don't want to hurt people's feelings. So yeah. Is it me, or does this guy look like an evil Elvis? Right? He looks like an evil fat Elvis.
The jury convicted Ken
Right?
for
I'm not the only one who sees
assault,
that. I'm
his
sorry.
first ever criminal conviction, and
Good.
sentenced him to 2 years in prison.
No. He
I
should
know,
be.
we're jumping for joy now. This POS finally got a little bit of his due, right? Well, here's the part where things go haywire. Not quite. See, Ken got released on bond pending his appeal, and rather than laying low on June 30th of 1981, Ken would walk into the D&G Tavern carrying an M1 Grand rifle with
Oh.
a literal bayonet attached.
Oh.
And he would loudly proclaim that he was going to kill Bo Bowmankamp, something he got arrested for about 5 minutes. At this point, you could practically hear the entire town of just 441 people.
Oh, this guy
collectively
fucked up.
thinking the exact same thought. Nobody is coming to save us.
This
from
small
guy.
community is,
Thus,
you know,
on the
they're just
morning
trying
of
to live
July
their
10th
lives,
of
go on their
1981,
days.
a few dozen
Then there's this
Skidmore
asshole
residents
ruining
gathered
their,
at the
you know,
local
nice
American
community.
Legion Hall with
And there's
their
just this
sheriff,
asshole over
Sheriff
here.
Danny Estes, to figure out legally what they could do. The sheriff reportedly put forward some very civil suggestions: a neighborhood watch, an alert system, maybe some signs around town. Stuff that might have made Ken chuckle more than quiver. That said, midway through the meeting, word came that Ken and Trina were spotted pulling up to the D&G Tavern down on Main Street in his pickup. And all that's known to us outsiders is that the meeting quietly adjourned, and between 30 and 60 folks decided to walk down Main Street to the tavern.
Yeah, I don't blame
Ken,
them. Yet
meanwhile,
again,
was
this
inside
small
having a
community
drink
of people
like any
who are
other
just
Friday.
farmers,
And afterwards, he
trying to
would
live
walk
their
back out,
lives, trying to
climb in his
do their
truck, start the
business.
engine, and light
Then
a
if there's
cigarette.
this fucko,
And then he suddenly had holes in
that
his
fucko
body.
over there.
They were shooting. What happened here is sort of a blur, but what's known is someone in this crowd helped Trina out of the vehicle, and then the car began getting totally lit up.
This really
Ken was
isn't
hit
so much a
multiple
tale
times
of
by what
weirdness
casings
as
suggest was 2 different firearms, struck in the
some
head,
asshole
the
finally
chest,
getting what
and
was coming
fittingly,
to him.
the neck. And Ken would die right there on Main Street as his car continued to idle.
Don't.
I guess it must have been really exciting and scary, because nobody remembered to call an ambulance, despite the fact that the police were well aware of the situation. And further, despite there being between 30 and 60 folks standing outside watching this whole thing happen, nobody ever reported seeing who
This
did it.
this really
There
isn't
was a
weird.
grand
This is
jury
just an
convened
entire
that
town
matter,
of like,
and
yeah, fuck
Trina
that guy
did
in
claim She
particular.
thought she saw Del Clement, a farmer and the son of the co-owner of the D&G Tavern, with a rifle, but nobody was ever indicted. Trina, meanwhile, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Skidmore, and she only received $17,600 of the $5 million she was seeking. Personally, I like how Highway Patrol Trooper Richard Stratton put it years later. Those were fathers and grandfathers on the streets in Skidmore that day. Ordinary, hardworking people. They did what they did because we didn't do our job, and then they went home and kept their mouths shut. And, at least as of today, that remains the case. Nobody has ever confessed to or been charged.
Good.
And while there's been some brief
Fuck 'em.
chatter from modern sheriffs since the event about getting to the
Human
bottom of
garbage
this thing,
gets taken
the
out.
case remains open, unsolved, and probably destined to stay just how it was on Main Street in
Good.
1981.
Fuck 'em.
And personally, that's the way I'd like it to stay.
Hello, Cosby. We're ooh. Catholic priests and gray aliens, you say? Welcome to Weird Wednesday, Cosby. We're getting to the point where a Catholic priest may have buried an alien in my home state. Let's find out. I am intrigued by the Catholic priest giving last rites,
There's a
potentially.
notion among those interested in UFOs that Roswell sort of started it all, something that, admittedly, I was once myself guilty of. But as you've learned, as you've watched this channel, that isn't necessarily true, not by a long shot. And even Missouri has its own card to play in this sense. See, 6 years before Roswell,
Oh, hey, Cape Girardeau. I've been there. It's lovely. It's a nice little town. Well, it's a city. It's a big ass city, but I liked it. It was nice. I've been there before. Overall, I call it nice.
in a farm field outside of a small river town named Cape Girardeau, the story goes that a
Girardeau.
Baptist preacher got pulled away from his calm evening to do something extremely unique, to give last rites to 3 dead aliens. Our witness here, to give last rites to 3 dead aliens. Our witness here is one Reverend William Huffman, a Southern Baptist minister and ex-evangelist who eventually settled down at Red Star Baptist Church in Cape Girardeau. And sometime between 8 and 9 at night one evening in the spring of 1941, usually said to have been April, his phone would ring, and the Reverend would quickly grab his coat and be picked up by a car.
Okay, I would
singing
like to
a little
know
to his family.
about
My
these
impression
aliens and
is
their
this
last
wasn't
rites, but my dog is barking. He too wishes he could give last rites to spacemen from beyond the stars. I hope you're having a nice day, Cosby, by the way. I'm sorry if you don't want to talk about it, I understand.
unusual for them, and that the thought among both the Reverend and his family at the time was that there'd been a plane crash out on the countryside, and that the Reverend's last rites were the only treatment they could offer those in the field. As such, the Reverend would be picked up and taken something between 3 and 15 miles outside of town.
Well, a
depending
Catholic
on the
priest
local
is
telling,
different from a
to a
Baptist,
local
but whatever.
field between Cape Girardeau and Chaffee. And pretty much immediately, it was clear to the Reverend that this was no plane. Huffman allegedly found a mangled metallic object that was clearly once
Ooh.
disc-shaped and was
Ooh.
15 to 20 feet across,
Ooh.
which had no rivets or joints of any type on its
Ah,
surface.
yes, aliens.
Part of the craft had been ripped open, and through the hole, Huffman could reportedly see little chairs inside for something smaller than an adult human, as well as knobs, gauges, and what he called a band of unreadable symbols that many likened to hieroglyphics. And then, of course, there were bodies, 3 of them, small creatures that were 3.5 to 5 feet in height, hairless
I like the Eye of Ra tattooed on these aliens.
and gray-skinned, with oversized heads, almond-shaped eyes, and no nose, mouth, or ears. By the Reverend's account, 2 of the creatures were already dead, and the third was still breathing, but in distress. As such, Huffman did all he knew how to do, something he had no theological training for. He gave last rites to whatever these creatures were, in what, if real, is probably the strangest moment in the entire history of pastoral care. Of course, aliens don't just crash in the middle of the field with no response, and this quickly became quite the commotion. The story typically says that before long, an Army Air Corps
I want you to imagine you're just some random priest, a random preacher, and all of a sudden you come across things from another world that might challenge your religion. I wonder how that would change you as a person, how that would make you different. Would you look up at the skies and wonder if your God is out there in the infinite void of space? What creations he might be hiding from you? I don't know. It would make me think, is all I'm saying.
training
If I was
detachments
still
out
a
of sight
religious
then
person, it
arrived,
would make me
and
think.
this is where the only alleged piece of evidence from this case was ever conceived. One that, I should be clear, has never been seen by anyone outside of those we hear this story from. Allegedly, before the military fully secured the site, a civilian, who in one version is named Fronabarger, snapped a photo with his Brownie camera, showing 2 men holding one of the alien bodies upright by the armpits. Then, of course, fearing what might happen to him for having a photo of an alien, the photographer handed the photo off to Huffman for safekeeping, rather than keep it himself. While Huffman didn't reveal this photo to the military, he was formally warned that this was a matter of
Is it me or does the alien look a little drunk in this sketch? Like he's not dead, but he's had a little too much to drink, and the men are just helping out their intergalactic space pal. Like, yeah.
national
That's
security,
actually kind of
and
wholesome now that
told,
I
in
think
no
about it.
uncertain terms, to never speak of this again. And for the most part, Huffman didn't, not publicly anyways. He apparently
That
kept
also
that
might be
photograph
true.
tucked away for the rest of his life, occasionally showing it to family. Then, after Huffman suffered a stroke in the 50s, he reportedly passed it on to his son, Guy Huffman, who showed it to some friends and a man named Walter Wayne Fisk. And this Mr. Fisk would later confirm he'd seen the photograph to investigators, but he wouldn't share anything further. Beyond this, the photo of course vanished, and nobody in the Huffman family knows where it is, at least according to them. Anyhow, according to the story, this whole tale was a huge Huffman family secret until 1991, when Huffman's granddaughter, Charlotte Mann, wrote a letter laying out this whole account to Leonard Stringfield, a well-known UFO crash retrieval researcher who published her account that July in his newsletter, Status Report. According to Mann, she'd actually been present on the night that phone call came in to her grandfather, being just 13 at the time, and she remembered him coming home shaken. That said, Huffman never told his story to the family. Rather, the story itself came out as a deathbed confession from Reverend Huffman's wife. And that's essentially the whole story on this matter. So, let me ask real quick, is it true? Well, my short and easy of it is there isn't much to debunk this story with, and there also isn't much to support.
But it would be
For
interesting
instance, the
nonetheless.
story's most dedicated chronicler, a Missouri-based author named Paul Blake, who actually wrote about the story in the book. Ammo 41, The Bombshell Before Roswell, was interviewed by news station KF.
I mean, it's an interesting story, but I'm a little skeptical of this,
He
Chief.
responded by saying, getting hard evidence about this case was like a, quote, trying to nail
I'm a
Jones
little
to the
skeptical
wall.
of this, Chief.
Meanwhile, the government claims they have no record of this event either. Nor did the Army Air Corps Training Detachment at Sykeston Field, the unit that responded to the crash, have any record of responding either. So rather than evidence to support it, this entire case just rests on the Reverend's story, or I guess his wife's retelling of it, which was then filtered through a 13-year-old's decades-old childhood memory, which she eventually wrote down as an adult in a letter to a UFO.
Yeah, I'm
researcher.
skeptical.
Well,
I mean, it's
no
an interesting
physical
story, and it
evidence,
makes you
it's
think about the,
not. When you add in the bit that many researchers claim that Huffman wasn't even Red Star Baptist's pastor until September of 1941, likely months after this alleged crash, the case gets even more shaky. Anyhow, at the end of the day, while I'm not sure I personally buy this story, I think it's fascinating that Missouri has its own extremely unique take on Roswell.
Yeah,
Sees a
that.
small-town preacher giving last rites to some visitors from out of this world.
Yeah, I don't think I believe that. I'm sorry. The Kingdom of Callaway. Huh.
So, I have a question for you. In the middle of the Civil War, did Callaway County, Missouri, play host to a small band of militia that inadvertently turned this small community into a sovereign nation? I promise you'll enjoy the story that leads to an answer. However, if you're going to tell the story of the so-called Kingdom of Callaway, I think it's best you start with the legend.
General Lyon
Before
and
we
his
get something like
forces
this,
did take over
in
the
October
state
of 1861,
here during
with
the Civil War.
just getting underway, Union forces decided it was time to deal with Callaway County, Missouri. Callaway, you see, had strong Confederate sympathies, despite
Doesn't
serving the
surprise
center of
me.
the Union state. As such, word reached
So
the
many of the
county that
Missouri
Federal troops were massing to
representatives at the
subdue
time
Callaway
did
County.
vote
However, a local militia
to join the
leader
Confederacy,
named
but
Jefferson
thanks to
Jones
General Lyon
was
and his
not about to let
forces
that happen. Jones
taking
rallied
over
about
basically
300
the state
armed
we
local farmers who
were in the
grabbed their
Union.
shotguns, hunting rifles, and whatever else people had lying around the farmhouse. And
So if you have
marched
any
them out to a
weird
rallying
or
point called
unusual
Brown Springs.
bullshit you'd like me to
And
see
because
or
Jones's
react
men
to,
didn't have anything resembling real
please give it to
artillery,
me.
they
I'm
improvised by painting
I
logs
want
black
to
and
hear
mounting them on
about
wagon
spooky
wheels,
aliens and
propping them up
bullshit.
in the
I'm
brush
sorry.
to look like cannons from a distance. Fake guns that were named Quaker guns at the time, so called because Quakers, as a matter of pacifist principle, would sometimes display them instead of actual weapons. The name stuck as shorthand for any fake artillery bluff. And, according to the story, this militia and Quaker gun strategy worked. The Union commander's scouts...
Me too. I
made
thought
what
these
looked
were
like a
all going to be
serious one-man
paranormal,
defensive
but
position,
apparently not.
artillery included, and rather than risk his men in a straight-up assault against what he believed was a well-armed force, he decided to hold off and wait for reinforcements. That hesitation opened the door for negotiation, and the two sides worked out a truce. Jones's men would disperse peacefully, and the Union troops.
Oh,
would leave
I've
the
heard about the
country
new
alone.
Madrid
And
earthquake.
this
That was
is where
awful.
the legend takes takes hold.
That was
The
awful.
story goes that because the Union
Oh,
general
I've heard about the
negotiated
St.
with
Louis
Jones rather
Marathon
than
and the
crushing
World
him,
Fair.
this
That
was
was a...
interpreted by the locals, and the Union as two sovereign powers making a deal with one another. Callaway County,
I
the
should
story
have,
goes,
but here I
effectively
am.
won recognition as its own independent nation somehow, right in the middle of Missouri. Hence the nickname that stuck around
I've
for
heard
over
about the Jesse
160
James
years
body
now,
double
the
bullshit.
Kingdom of Callaway. To this day, the county leans all the way into this too. There's an official Kingdom of Callaway flag, a historical society
AI
dedicated to
robot.
keeping the story alive.
AI robot. AI robot. You know what I'm going to do for you, AI robot? I'm going to give you something special. Just for you, AI robot. Just for you, robot. Just for you, robot. I want you to hear this. I want you to hear what I'm about to say for you, AI robot.
Aeons ago, brothers from outer space, under the spiritual guidance of the Masters of Wisdom, the creators of the universe, came to Earth.
I would like you to think about that when you kindly fuck off. And please never come again. I am so tired of your AI viewers bullshit, robot. And I know you're programmed to do this, so you don't have any thought behind this.
And local pride in being the one
Okay. I also have some other weird bullshit about cryptids or paranormal phenomenon from every state. Do you want to look at that as well? We can switch it up if you want to. Me fingies hurt. Let me just go find that video then. One moment. Let me find that. If you have any weird alien or paranormal bullshit, like cryptids like Macaulay Membe, I would like to hear about the last dinosaur. Possibly. Okay. We'll be right back after these messages. We'll be right back.
After these messages, we'll be right back. After these messages, we'll be right back.
After these messages, we'll be right back. After these messages, we'll be right back.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Yeah.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Okay, hey, up next is one obscure cryptid from every state. Let's learn some about
All right.
cryptids.
Today, I'm going to tell you...
Oh, this is Dime Store Adventures made this. Mr. Dime Store Adventures. I think this might be a mister. I might be wrong. If I am, I'm sorry. After these messages, they'll be right, Cox. So let's see if this is any good.
about one obscure cryptid from every U.S. state. So let's kick things off with...
Alabama, the
Okay.
Mobile Wolf Woman.
Okay,
Wolf
this
woman?
is a fantastic one to start with.
Okay, Mobile Wolf Woman. What comes to your mind when you hear that? I think Southern Muscle Mommy. I'm gonna not lie to you. I'm sorry.
On April 8th of 1971, the Mobile,
The
Alabama
immobile
Register
wolf.
reported that over the last
That's her
week,
cousin who was in a
dozens of
wolf
Mobile
scooter.
residents had called
I'm
into
sorry.
the paper claiming to have seen a half-woman, half-wolf. It was
Okay.
like a woman and wolf, pretty and hairy.
Okay,
said one
that's
worried witness.
that's
My
interesting.
daddy saw it down in a marsh.
Can
and
we
it
see an
chased him
image of the
home,
Mobile
said
wolf
another.
woman?
Even typically
I want to see art of this
unflappable
wolf woman.
teenagers were staying home at night, terrified of the horrible beast. And what exactly did that beast look like? Well, this, of course.
This makes me think of a... Okay, you know what this makes me think of, this art right here? This makes me think of like a 70s horror manga, right? This feels like something out of a 70s horror manga. I'm not wrong, right? This... Or, yeah, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the dog-headed guy, yeah, that too.
Yeah, that there is the
But I'm
Mobile
thinking of, like-
Register's attempt to recreate what the wolf woman might have looked like. Pretty and hairy indeed. Despite the apparent earnesty of the original calls, though, the wolf woman story very quickly became a bit of a punchline around Mobile. See, most sightings were really just second-hand reports from a friend of a friend, and so over time, people just quit taking the wolf woman seriously. To a point where local theaters were even using the monster as a promotional tool. Like, just take a look at this ad I found. You've heard the hoax about the wolf woman, right? Well, come watch our movie about a real monster. Bigfoot.
Hey.
I also found a story saying that one drunken resident had called into the police station thinking that he had finally cornered the wolf woman, and then when the cops arrived, all they found was one very frightened
Oh,
collie
poor dog.
As funny as
Poor
all that
dog.
is, though,
Poor
my favorite
baby.
detail actually comes from a letter that the Mobile Press printed a couple weeks after the sightings first started to pop up. Apparently, someone had cut an article about the wolf woman out of the local paper and then sent it to a soldier from Alabama who was stationed in Vietnam. And the soldier wrote back saying, "When you capture the wolf woman, why don't you send her out here to Hanoi? Maybe she can help find all the POWs and MIAs."
That's
as
in a
far as I
little
can
bad
tell,
taste joke,
the
in my
wolf woman
opinion.
sightings actually stopped right around the same time that that letter was printed. So maybe she went.
Alaska, the cellophane ghost.
In
Okay.
August of 1975, 15 children in Fairbanks, Alaska reported seeing a 7-foot-tall, pure white humanoid figure that had no hair, no joints in its limbs, and
That
no facial
sounds
features
creepy a little bit.
besides two perfectly circular eyes
That sounds
and
a little
pair of pointy
spooky.
ears on the top of its head.
A little spooky.
No adult ever saw this creature, but the kids were supposedly seeing it constantly. Like they'd spot them up in trees and on rooftops.
That
and
sounds a little
sometimes even
disturbing to me.
Floating 5 feet above the local river.
Just this weird
like it was dead
thing
in the air.
floating.
One kid even drew a picture of what the man supposedly looked like, and here is that picture. I don't blame the kids for being scared of that. Just imagine that thing hovering in the air and floating across the river at you. As you might guess, though, most adults in the area thought that the whole thing was just some big prank. And one journalist even noted that he actually heard muffled laughter in the background of a phone call that he took about the sightings. So I guess the kids were going, "Oh yeah, Mr. Reporter, that monster definitely floated across the river at us. I'm gonna tell him he has no kneecaps." And the monster had no kneecaps. Anyway, though, I only found one single newspaper article about this monster, and as far as I can tell, nobody ever printed anything about it ever again after 1975. So I guess the story just fizzled out pretty much as soon as it got started. And by the way, real quick,
That's
before we move
kinda
on to the next
just
cryptid, I did want to draw attention to the name of this monster, the cellophane ghost. You might have noticed that nobody in the newspaper article ever referred to the monster that way, and that is because I made up that name. See, a lot of the cryptids that we're going to be talking about today are so obscure that nobody even bothered to come up with a name for them.
Oh,
And
that's
so, the
depressing.
honor fell upon me to come up with titles for some of these cryptids. The name
That's
of this
depressing.
particular beast from Alaska I based on a quote from the newspaper article. Because apparently one of the local kids didn't believe in the monster and said that it was in reality just a blue plastic bag flying around in the wind. And so I juggled around a few names like Plastic Jack or the Alaskan Bagman.
Plastic Jack just makes me think of like a. Okay, I'm gonna be stupid, but is it me or does Plastic Jack sounds like a character I would come up with name? Like a name for a supervillain I'd pull out of my ass at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Before I finally settled on the cellophane ghost. Which has a
It
nice
really
ring to it, I
really
think.
does sound like something I'd come up with off the top of my damn
the
head.
Main Street Phenom.
Pretty bland name on this one, but the newspapers back in 1894 did refer to this thing pretty consistently as the Main Street Ghost or Main Street Phenomenon. So who am I to upset tradition? Here's the story. Way back in September of 1894, a man was walking home late at night
1894.
through Tucson, Arizona, when a peculiar animal rushed out at him. And the man kicked at the beast, and he hit nothing but air, and he watched as the monster seemed to disappear right before his eyes.
Why would you just kick a
As the
random
man
animal you
continued
just
his
saw?
walk home,
That's
the
just
animal
mean. That's just
repeatedly
cruel.
appeared and disappeared in front of him.
That's just like being
blinking
an
in and out of
asshole. Why would
sight
you kick a random
until
animal you just
finally,
saw?
The poor guy made it back to his house, absolutely terrified. Strangely, though, despite seeing the monster many times during the course of his walk home, the man could hardly describe it. All he could remember was its great glowing eyeballs piercing through the night. Soon after that horrible experience, many other residents of Tucson began to report encounters with the beast. Over the next few days, at least 20 people saw the animal.
Well,
And
that's a
each
lot of
time
people.
It seemed to take an entirely different shape. Sometimes it looked like a dog, and sometimes a donkey, and sometimes even a man walking around on all fours. Before long,
That's
a
spooky.
search party was put together. A whole crowd of townsfolk walked into the night armed with pistols and knives and clubs, all ready to flush out the monster that was terrorizing their town. And wouldn't you know it, the monster actually appeared. The Main Street Ghost rose right out of the ground directly in front of the crowd. Just whoop. So immediately the crowd started shooting at the beast, and one man tried to stab it with a knife, but alas, the monster remained uninjured.
Okay, imagine just fighting a shape-shifting ghost. That feels like something, yet again, a superhero. This feels like a job for like the Ghostbusters or the Catholic Church. Or some kind of superhero needs to fight this shape-shifting paranormal phenomenon is all I'm saying.
All the bullets and blades seemed to pass right through it. So the crowd ran away. They had lost the battle, and they got the heck out of there. Fast forward a few days, and now over 100 Mexicans are running around downtown Tucson, desperately trying to find the ghost. By now, the monster had the city in an absolute whirlwind. Like every night, people were encountering the monster, and horses were throwing off their riders as the ghost materialized in front of them, and police were emptying pistols at the monster and hitting nothing but air, like clearly this thing was here to stay. Until it was discovered about a month later that the ghost was actually 5 people running around at night wearing pillowcases on their heads. Yeah, this is our first cryptid story that actually has a definite resolution.
Oh.
The Main Street Phenom of Tucson, Arizona, in reality, was a few people running around at night trying to scare the local townsfolk. And the reason they did this
So they had a
is so that
supervillain
their
group.
friends could go out and rob people's houses.
They had a literal... These guys were literal Scooby-Doo fucking villains. These people had to deal with a literal Scooby-Doo villain. That's like something Scooby-Doo villains did. Oh, I dressed as a ghost to steal the treasure. Fucking Scooby-Doo level villainry.
A ghostly distraction. The newspapers never actually specified how the ghost fakers were caught, but apparently the entire thing was just a scheme to get
they
people
are
out of their
incredibly
homes
lucky.
and distracted so that the burglar crew could sneak in and steal stuff. And I'd say their plan actually worked pretty well, considering that they successfully coaxed hundreds of people into running around at night trying to catch the ghost. Ultimately, though, they did get caught, and the Main Street Ghost was finally put to bed for good in March of 1895 when the ringleader was tried and convicted of grand larceny. So don't get any funny ideas.
Arkansas, the Bull Roarer.
This is another monster that I'm pretty sure made exactly one appearance in all of printed history. The narrators for this story are a group of Illinois pleasure seekers who drove down to Arkansas in 1908 after hearing about a cave near Mammoth Springs that was still mostly unexplored. Composing the group were two couples from Illinois, a woman from Indiana.
You could not get me to explore a cave. Like, cave diving to me seems like one of the... It just seems very dangerous, and you're going to get yourself killed kind of pastime. I'm sorry.
And at first, the group had a great time. They entered the cave, and they walked across a natural bridge made of stone, and they passed through a very wide tunnel deep underground, and eventually they came to a subterranean lake that blocked their forward progress. Luckily for them, though, somebody had actually left a bunch of wooden planks at the entrance to the cave, so the group built a raft, and they sent two men from the party out onto the lake.
This raft idea seems like you're just going to end up getting killed in the lake. Splunkers, a six-figure job, a wife and 4 kids when they hear a called yeah, it'd be like that, don't it?
In the water, drug the raft
it'd be like that, though.
500 feet downstream through some twists and turns until all of a sudden a roaring howl echoed through the cave. There, right in front of the raft, illuminated by the soft glow of the men's lamp, was a beast, an immense creature rising out of the water, bigger than a bull, with flippers like a seal, and the head of a horse with no ears. Immediately, the monster charged at the raft, flashing its long, pointed teeth, so bang! One of the men fired off a shotgun that he had brought into the cave, and then he fired again right after, and the monster, seemingly wounded by the blasts, began to thrash around in the tunnel, howling in pain, before it turned.
So they shot Dory from Super Mario 64.
And disappeared into an opening in the wall of the cave. Of course, the men rowed back up the river as quick as they could. They met up with the rest of the group who had heard the horrible bellowing and shotgun blasts rumbling around through the cave, and the whole group made their way back up to the surface, accompanied the entire time by the echoing shrieks of the monster lurking deep below. And that is the whole story. The bull roarer lives in this one newspaper article from 1908 and nowhere else. That's another name that I came up with, by the way. I'm pretty proud of that one, bull roarer. I did kind of steal it from Lord of the Rings, though, if I'm being honest.
California, the San Gabriel Ophidian.
All right,
Snake
so
Man?
Back in 1906, the Sierra Madre Mountains of California experienced an unusually large amount of earthquakes, which opened up a whole bunch of fissures across the mountain range. And as they opened up those fissures, they also released
Yes,
a
yeah, call He-Man.
long-forgotten flying subterranean monster
Ow.
into the waters of the San Gabriel River. At least according to this newspaper article from November of 1906. If you read the story here, you'll learn about a giant slimy snake with 20-foot wings that multiple people reported seeing as it flew and swam up and down the San Gabriel River. But if you ask me,
Oh,
the
they're
most
fighting
interesting
Q,
part
the
of this
flying
story
serpent,
is
or
not the sightings,
Reptilicus.
but instead
Good
that
old
idea
Reptilicus.
that the monster was released from underground by all the earthquakes. Proponents of that theory like to point out a few of the snake's physical features as evidence. Like, for example, the monster was grayish-white in color, which is common in subterranean creatures, and the monster also seemed to be blind, which makes sense because if you live deep underground, you don't need eyes, right? And you might have already noticed the problem with this theory, and that is the fact that the monster had wings. Like, it had 20-foot wings, and they thought it came from underwater caves. Like, somehow the monster was blind from growing up in caverns filled with water, but then simultaneously it also developed
Yeah, it does
wings
sound like
for no
Reptilicus, like I
reason.
said. I'm
Like,
sorry.
I know I'm criticizing about I'm criticizing a 120-year-old theory about a monster that nobody's ever heard of today.
Everybody
But like, still, come on, how can you let that slip by? It's so obvious.
Colorado, the Wazooey Man.
This one just really makes
Let me hear that name. Let me hear that.
monster that
Was sweet red. Was.
nobody's ever heard of today, but like, still, come on, how can you let that slip by? It's so obvious.
Colorado, the Wazooey Man.
This one just really makes me laugh. The earliest source for this monster that I could find is Jim Brandon's Weird America, published back in 1978. And I couldn't find any newspaper articles about this cryptid or any other appearances in any other books. So I can only assume that Mr. Brandon must have collected this story personally from some resident of Colorado. As the story goes, two boys one evening in 1973 were shooting air pistols on a backcountry road near Pueblo, Colorado, when all of a sudden a couple of huge red eyes appeared before them, and one of the boys raised up his pistol and took a shot at the eyes, and then the monster picked them up and dumped them into a ditch and then hit them over the head with a fence post. Just
Okay, well, the
So
Wazooey Man
horrified
is.
boys ran back to their truck, only to discover that they had lost their keys. So they started walking home and trying to hitchhike. And apparently, the whole way, they were followed by a great big monster that looked like a haystack with glowing red eyes.
Connecticut,
Yeah, I
the
heard.
North Haven Ghost Dwarf.
This one comes from an article published in the Boston Daily Globe back in 1886. One night in
It does sound
January
like out
that
of
year,
Banjo-Kazooie.
a few brickyard workers were walking home down an old country road when suddenly there in front of them stood a man about 3 feet tall, a mysterious-looking dwarf alone in the darkness. Now, the leader of the workers was a big, tough Irish guy named Owen McNulty, and McNulty took one look at that little man in the road, took a shovel off his shoulder, and shouted, "Boys, I guess I'll scoop this chap." Then he ran up to the dwarf and swung a mighty swing, and his shovel passed right through the figure like there was nothing even there. And that scared McNulty and the gang pretty bad, so they ran down the road, ready to tell everybody about the ghost dwarf that they had just encountered. But evidently, curiosity must have got the better of fear, because when the next night rolled around, McNulty and the gang were back on the road again, determined to catch another glimpse of that mysterious magical dwarf. And wouldn't you know it, they found him once again. There he was, standing in the road, that very same little dwarf. And Owen McNulty, again, immediately grabbed his shovel, ran up to the dwarf, swung for the fences, and tried to knock its head off. But again, no luck.
This just feels like they're just taunting a ghost or a spirit or a fairy or something.
Split in half, and it floated way up into the night sky, and it evaporated into thin air. Gone in an instant. I really, really love this story because it's written as if you're supposed to be shocked and scared of that little ghost dwarf. But to me, I am 10 million times more afraid of Owen McNulty, because that guy saw a small man on the road and instantly decided to decapitate it. Like, that dwarf did nothing. It didn't say anything or do anything or hurt anybody. And Owen just yelled, "I guess I'll scoop this chap," and then tried to bash its face in with a shovel. Like, what if that was a child or just like a short, regular guy?
Yeah, that's
like,
a good point you got there. That would get you in jail.
Is the insane roadside shovel murderer and not the harmless little dwarf guy that did nothing to nobody.
Delaware, the devil in black.
In April
That's
of
not as funny
1909,
as the Lazuli
in
man, but I don't think
Georgetown,
anything
Delaware,
is.
A really tall guy dressed in a black cloak kept jumping out from behind trees and scaring women.
That's it?
And
okay.
That is pretty much the whole story. Like, one time he jumped out at a lady and she ran screaming into her house.
This sounds like a
local
prankster.
A grocery store. And once he popped out of a shed and scared a woman in her yard. And honestly, the only reason that I'm even counting this as a cryptid is because a couple of newspapers reported that the guy might be bulletproof. If it wasn't for that small little tinge of supernatural flavor, then this would kinda just be a tall, creepy guy.
Florida, the Grim Grouper.
The Grim Grouper, as I've named it, was a giant fish that was captured in May of 1934 by a
That's it, just a big ass
lighthouse keeper
fish.
who was stationed just a few miles off the
Kaiju-sized
coast of
ass
Miami.
fish, I'm sorry.
The fish was 8.5 feet long, and it weighed 275 pounds, and it had the head of an alligator with tiny little yellow eyes, and the beast had 3 rows of sharp teeth, and it was colored green and brown and white, and it had green stripes on its head, and it smelled like a grouper and not like a shark, which is where I got the name. And I guess its tummy was really smooth. And none of that really sounds all that exciting, right? Like, I'm listing off all these traits that are sort of strange, but in the grand scheme of things,
that has caught a big weird ass fish.
A weird fish. Like, as far as cryptids go, it's fairly bland. So why did I choose this fish to represent Florida if it's kind of boring? Well, it's because the sole newspaper article that I found concerning this monster includes a quote that I just really want to show you. That the fish was of a savage nature was indicated by the several attempts made to bite the line with which it was being raised to the platform of the light, where it expired about 10 minutes later. So in essence, that quote is like, we were only trying to string it up and torture it to death, and it tried to bite the line and escape and not die, so of course it was savage.
Georgia, the Chickamauga Megafrog.
What? Oh, that sounded like... One moment, I'm getting a phone call.
Here's one that I found in a sporting goods magazine from 1893. According to this article, someone in 1866 brought a whole bunch of frogs from the swamps of Mississippi and dumped them into the Chickamauga River in Georgia. And then fast forward a couple decades, and now the frogs are gigantic and vicious. They are big enough to swallow chickens and mean enough to attack full-grown men. Like one guy, for example, in Lafayette, Georgia, said that a frog jumped up and grabbed the end of his coat and just ripped the coat in half, just right off the guy's
This is
back.
not as good as the Loveland frog.
I'm going to be honest, though, the main reason that I chose this one was because I wanted to say Chickamauga mega frogs.
Yeah, that's not as good as
Hawaii,
the
Phantom
Loveland.
Dog of Mauna Loa.
Okay, so
Sounds like another
I'm
Scooby-Doo
sure by
villain.
now you can tell that I'm really not interested in cryptids because I believe in them, but instead because I think they're just super fun to read and learn about as like social and cultural phenomena. And at the end of the day, I also just really like a good story. This next one, though, is a little bit different from all the rest because I truly believe that something is going on here, to a point where I'm honestly a little bit shocked that this story isn't more well known. So, between 1959 and 1966, researchers at a weather observatory in Hawaii would occasionally spot a 10 to 15 pound dog jumping around near their station, which doesn't seem that strange until you learn that the observatory is 11,000 feet above sea level on the side of the Mauna Loa volcano. And from that observatory,
11,000
23 miles to the nearest inhabited building, and there is no water up there and no vegetation, no animals, really no anything that might assist a little dog living out in the wild on its own. It is literally just miles and miles of barren rock. It almost seems unbelievable that a dog could survive up there, but somehow this dog did for years. Like, researchers assumed that the dog must have been eaten out of the observatory's trash, and sometimes they would even leave out dog food, but staffing at the station was super inconsistent, and sometimes the dog would literally disappear from the station for years at a time. So clearly, this dog had to have been finding food and water on its own 23 miles from any obvious food source. Like, despite how impossible that seems, this really happened. And like, occasionally sightings of the dog would also line up with volcanic eruptions, which led some people to believe that the dog was some kind of like herald, like a spiritual warning for upcoming
it's the Herald of
volcanic activity.
Galactus, but with
the researchers
volcanoes.
always maintained that
It's
they
the
saw
Herald
dog
of
way too
Pele.
often for that to be the case. Like, all the time, they would just see it sitting on some
Prepare
rocks,
for my
watching
master's
the north,
arrival.
always
Bark.
just staying a little bit too far out of reach. And if you don't believe the researchers, they even got a picture. Is that not the best thing?
Look at him! Look at this little fella! Look at him! Look at him! He's just a friend! Little man! Little guy right there!
You've ever seen. Like, that is a phantom dog from the 1960s on the side of Mauna Loa, curled up in a little gully. Like, this one, no matter how you slice it, is a real, honest-to-goodness mystery.
Idaho,
Volcano Dog does sound like a
Soda
Rejects
Springs
character.
Serpent.
Okay, so after looking through about 1 billion of these old monster stories, I kind of get the feeling that a lot of newspapers just ran these articles so that they had an excuse to put a big crazy picture in the middle of their paper to try and catch people's eyes. Like, let's take a look at this story from Soda Springs, Idaho, back in July of 1980, and you might see what I mean. A family of 3 was fishing in the Blackfoot Reservoir when they saw a dark lump in the water, and then another lump, and another lump, so they decided to go back to shore. And that's the whole story. They never saw anything else besides those lumps.
That's
and
lame.
Granted, the lumps were about 8 feet apart and seemed to be moving as one continuous creature, so I can understand why that might be scary for the family to see, but like, this is the absolute thinnest of monster stories you could ever imagine, and I feel very confident in saying that the only reason that the paper even ran that article is so that they could print a big picture of a sea monster going blah!
Illinois, the monster of Gooseville.
Back in August of
We're getting some really good,
1949,
like,
many citizens
cartoon
of Gooseville,
supervillain
Illinois,
names.
reported sighting a monster that was shaggy and brown and looked like a bear. And also, it left tracks that looked exactly like bear tracks.
So it's a bear.
I did find one newspaper that said that the monster may have had moose antlers, so I guess you never know, but it sure sounds to me like this one was just a bear. But the reason that I wanted to use this one for Illinois is not because of the monster itself, but because supposedly the monster generated such a buzz around Gooseville that 100 locals got together, literally 100, and formed a posse that was dead set on capturing the monster. And even though they never caught the beast, what they did succeed in doing is taking this absolutely incredible photo of 100 guys lined up with shotguns trying to flush out the beast. Like, this is something that you would never, ever, ever see today. This is a complete and total relic of the past. Like, I'm sure you've all heard that quote that's like, born too late to explore the world, born too early to explore the universe. Well, how about born too late to go monster hunting with 100 of your neighbors? That's what I'm sad about.
Indiana, the Boonville Catman.
Catman!
Okay, so this next one is somehow simultaneously very silly and very unnerving, at least
Catman!
for me. Like, there's just something about the physical description of this monster that really freaks me out. So listen to this. Back on November 22nd of 1947, an 8-year-old boy was walking home from the movies through Boonville, Indiana, when all of a sudden he encountered a horrifying beast. So he ran home screaming to his parents, and after he calmed down, he described the monster as a giant black cat with glowing green eyes that walks around on its hind legs with its front paws raised above its head.
This
And
sounds like a
supposedly, as it
werecat
walked,
or
the
some sort
monster
of
would
monster
lean
you'd
over and,
encounter
like,
in some
awkwardly
sort of...
shuffle around like a man walking on his knees.
This sounds like something
And
you
at
would
first,
see in like
the
a
boy's
B
parents
movie of
just
the
thought that
era.
The kid was seeing things, but then a few days later, the boy's sister reported seeing the exact same thing on Thanksgiving night. And then after that, a group of women, of adult women, claimed to see the Catman. And a guy saw it in his backyard, and people started reporting that a wild beast was tearing up their trash.
See, this would make for a
And
decent
before
monster
long,
movie,
once
some sort of
again,
Catman.
we had bands of local vigilantes walking around with guns trying to hunt down the Catman.
Having your
They
hands
never
over
found
your head is
anything,
very...
and eventually, the tale of the Catman faded away to history. But like I said, something about the physical description of this one just really gets to me. Like, it's basically a panther shuffling around on its hind legs with its paws in the air, leaned forward. And like, something about that is right in the sweet spot between familiar and uncanny to me. Like, I can imagine looking out my kitchen window and seeing that in my yard, and just mentally picturing it already freaks me out.
Iowa.
Oh yeah, I hate doing that.
One of my favorite parts of reading through all these old monster and ghost reports is just how quickly they appear and then disappear. Like, a lot of these stories burn incredibly hot for like a week, and then they just wisp away like nothing even happened. Case in point, Albia, Iowa, 1892. For exactly 1 week, the people of Albia were terrified of stepping outside their homes between 11 and 3 o'clock at night because those were the hours that the woman in black stalked the streets. An 8-foot-tall woman dressed in black with gigantic arms and hands who would grab unsuspecting women on the shoulders and then flash an evil grin right in their face.
Oh, so it's just a
The
giant woman.
would appear on rooftops and then
Let me at her.
away into
Let me at her.
nothing,
Let me at the
and
giant
bullets
woman.
seemed to pass right
Let me at her
through
at the giant woman.
and she hated women and chased them at every opportunity.
This just sounds like an angry
Literally
giant
dozens
woman.
of people reported
Let me
sightings
at
this
her, man.
thing, and every
Put me in, coach.
day, the local paper had new articles, and then just she disappeared.
Well, you
completely
think about it, a
after
giant woman, like an
fury
8-foot
of
woman would
hysterical
have, like, big
articles.
hands,
The
just
woman in
like,
black just
proportionally
completely dropped
speaking,
out of the
right?
press with zero resolution,
Proportionately
no
speaking, a giant, like an
explanation,
8-foot
just
tall
a one-way
woman would
ticket
have
from
pretty big hands,
complete
right?
and total pandemonium to radio silence in a single week in 1892, and for the most part,
Oh.
nobody's ever talked about it since then.
Kansas, the Happy Valley Serpent.
And another thing that I really appreciate about these 19th century monster reports is just how seriously they take all these stories. Like, if you read a newspaper article about a cryptid sighting from pretty much any time past 1960 or so, the article is definitely going to have like a kind of mocking tone to it. Like, oh yeah, this guy says he saw a sea monster, but if we're being honest, he probably just had a little too much to drink out on the boat, right? But then a 19th century reporter will treat things exactly the opposite. They will just straight up print the craziest story you've ever heard with total sincerity. Like, check this out. This is the story of the Happy Valley Serpent from Kansas back in 1887. One night in September, a farmer was riding home to Mulvane, Kansas, when he came across an immense log laying in the road. So the farmer rode a little closer, and he discovered that the log was actually a 40-foot-long snake with a body as big around as a flour barrel.
That's
And
a
the snake
big-ass
had
snake.
its head lifted 8 feet up off the ground, looming over the farmer, and hanging out of its mouth was the back half of a baby cow. And with a quick swallow, the serpent.
So this
finished
guy is
its
just
meal
fighting a
and it
kaiju.
disappeared into a nearby
This guy just was
cornfield,
gonna fight a
leaving the
kaiju.
farmer shocked and appalled at what he had just witnessed.
This guy just encountered Titanoboa.
Kentucky Dog Eater.
Oh, that's
The
not nice.
legend
I
of
don't.
the
I like
Kentucky
dogs.
Dog Eater
I like
had a
dogs.
surprisingly long lifespan for a monster that is nowadays mostly forgotten. Starting in at least 1883, locals of the Danville, Kentucky area began reporting that a horrible monster was eating their
Oh, no.
canine companions. And then they kept talking about the monster until, at minimum, 1902, which is 20 years later. That is an eternity in cryptid sighting years. And this was not just a bunch of people blaming their missing dogs on some unseen monster. Like, it wasn't a farmer going, oh, Rover disappeared last night, must have been the dog eater. Like, no, there were many, many supposed sightings of the beast. Some people thought that the dog eater was a jaguar or American tiger, and others described it as some sort of horrible cross between a panther and a mastiff. And one guy even drew a picture.
Oh, yeah, you do. You know what this makes me think of? Cosby. Cosby, I have a request for you, please. I have a request for you, please. Could you put this in the background of one of your stories? It reminds me... Okay, now that I've gotten that request out, you remember that art of like the leopards or like the big cats with the human faces? That's what this makes me think of.
The terrible monster that he swore he saw. And these sightings were not just glimpses either. Like, I found a ton of very detailed encounters with the dog eater. Once, in 1885, a farmer was hauling hay when he saw some weird monster coming across his field, so he just shouted, "Here comes the dog eater," because of course that's what it was. At the time, the dog eater was so well known, that's all he had to say. And then 12 people chased the creature across the countryside until it ran out of sight. Once, in 1894, a group of 4 people encountered the beast on some train tracks, and then they watched as it bounded up the rails in a series of 20-foot leaps. And in 1893, a couple of raccoon hunters found the dog eater drinking out of a stream, and as soon as they got close, their pack of hunting dogs noticed the monster and huddled together, trembling with fear, instinctively understanding that their natural predator was right in front of them. And that is not even mentioning the many, many gruesome stories of dogs getting attacked that I don't even want to show you because they're just kind of gross and sad. Like, this thing was a huge
Yeah,
deal
this
in
thing
Central
needs its own
Kentucky
horror
for a
movie.
long
This thing
time.
needs its
And
own
now
horror
it is
movie.
pretty much entirely forgotten.
This thing needs its own horror
It'll
movie.
always be endlessly fascinating to me how some of these stories just disappeared, while other super localized cryptids like the Jersey Devil or the Mothman became these national figures that pretty much everybody knows. My only real guess is that it's just way more fun to talk about a devil that jumps around on rooftops than it is to talk about a monster that dismembers dogs.
Louisiana.
It really
the
is.
Feathered Devil.
In December of 1891, a man in New Orleans shot and killed a gigantic bird that many locals proclaimed to be the devil. The monster was as big as a sheep and had 9-foot-long white wings with black feathers at the tip, as well as a pouch in its bill like a pelican's. And that is kind of it. Honestly, the main reason that I wanted to include this one was because of this quote at the end of the article. "Enough feathers were taken from the bird to make a large pillow. They are of excellent quality, white and soft as down." So this may in fact be the only cryptid that was ever made into bedding. How embarrassing.
Maine. The Hallowell Ghost Arm.
This story starts with a mill worker named Eli Wing, who in
Ha!
1837
Wing.
had his arm torn clean off his body by the power of a spinning mill wheel. Eli actually survived the accident, and he decided to bury his severed arm in the swamp behind the mill, and then he went on to live a long and fruitful life. And that little arm buried in the swamp got real jealous that it was left behind. So jealous, in fact, that if you dare to speak of it, the arm will punch through the window of whatever building you're in and try to strangle you.
That's
So if you were
weird.
wondering, that is actually why I'm shooting this video outside. There's no windows.
Maryland. The Orange Lake Saw Serpent.
One time, in March of 1895, a young man was ice skating on Orange Lake in Newburgh, Maryland.
Okay, Orange
when All of
Lake.
a sudden, he turned around and saw a 35-foot-long sea serpent swimming through the ice. The monster had a saw-like dorsal fin that it was using to carve its way through the ice as it chased the skater
Well,
down.
I hope this gives you
Thankfully,
inspiration
the
for
young man made a
monsters for
break
your
shore,
stories,
and
at
he
least.
escaped to safety before the saw serpent could
I hope at least
cleave
this
him in half.
inspires someone out there.
I really miss the days when you could just go tell your local reporter anything and they'd actually run it in the paper.
Massachusetts. The Provincetown Black Flash.
Okay, so this guy is probably the most well-known cryptid in the whole video, but he's just got such an awesome story that I'm gonna cheat a little and include him anyway. So for those of you who don't know, the Black Flash was a mysterious hooded figure that cast a long shadow of terror over Provincetown, Massachusetts.
So a
during
supervillain.
the 1930s and 40s.
A supervillain.
For years, residents of Provincetown would report a giant 7-foot-tall guy dressed in a black hood and cape.
Yeah, that sounds like a supervillain.
Screaming at people. He would jump up on windowsills and howl into the window, and some people even claimed that the Black Flash would shoot blue fire out of his mouth at people, and that actually led the local police to conclude that the Black Flash was not just a public nuisance, but also an arsonist. Like many fires in town during...
So this guy sounds a lot like Spring-Heeled Jack's big lanky-ass cousin from what I'm getting here.
During that period were blamed
Spring-Heeled Jack's lanky-ass cousin.
So literally hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property damage was attributed to this cryptid. And people really, really believed it too. Like children were terrified of being alone, and women were scared to even leave the house, and dozens of men were walking the streets every night hoping to capture the elusive Flash. But it gets even better than that. Every once in a while, the local newspapers in Provincetown would report that somebody actually cornered the Black Flash, that some like farmer or a dog would get him stuck up against a fence, and then boing, the Flash would jump straight up in the air.
Holy shit, it is just Spring-Heeled Jack.
Over that 10-foot fence.
It's just Spring-Heeled Jack.
Absolutely nothing. And for a final detail, in October of 1939, many children in Provincetown actually dressed up as the Black Flash for Halloween. Everybody loves a good villain.
Michigan, the Carter snake.
This is another one with unbelievable longevity for a cryptid that is pretty much unheard of nowadays. In 1894, somebody saw a gigantic snake in Carter's Lake, Michigan, and then somebody saw it again in 1901, and again in 1906, and again in 1907, and in 1908, somebody saw it. And in 1909,
okay, so far I'm following you.
And
yep.
then in 1913, a bunch of people got together and started the Carter Snake Association, which was an organization.
Sounds like an association of strippers or male porn stars to me. I'm sorry.
Eventually, the locals actually started holding a Carter Snake Day once a year, where everybody would go and look for the snake. And in 1935, people were still seeing it, and they were still talking about it in 1949, and even as late as 2001 and 2006.
That's 20 years ago, people. That's 20 years ago.
And now, as far as I can tell, it is nearly extinct. Like, go ahead and do a quick Google search, and you'll see.
But Carter Snake Association really does sound like a bunch of male porn stars. I'm sorry.
Dead. Nobody talks about it anymore. It is gone from the public consciousness pretty much completely. And I think that's kind of sad, because that little snake hung on for so long, and he did it without even being that exciting of a cryptid. Like, this snake cannot fly, can't breathe fire, nothing like that. He is literally just a big snake that people talked about for over a century. Like, this is your lunch pail, everyday, blue-collar, hard-working cryptid through blood, sweat, and tears. He hung around for decades, and now his legend is about to slip away. So I tell you what, if anybody watching this video happens to live in the vicinity of Carter's Lake in Michigan, then why don't you maybe head on over to that lake and see the snake, if you know what I mean. Just try and get yourself some press and extend that reptile's lifespan just a little bit more, because right now, the poor guy is on life support.
Minnesota, the Minnetonka serpent turtle.
Serpent turtle? There's been a lot of snakes in this video. It's like, oops, all giant serpents.
A horrible monster
Oops, all giant
has been
sea
spotted
serpents.
in Lake Minnetonka in Minnesota. And I think for this one, rather than describe the monster, I'm just going to show you the picture of it. That the
Okay, I'm
newspapers
preparing my
ran with
booty hole for
story.
the picture. I'm
So,
sorry.
There you go.
I love it. I love it. I love this thing. It makes me think of something like frick. It's like if Dr. Seuss had to design a kaiju. It's like if Dr. Seuss had to design a kaiju. And I love it for that.
You are not going to catch me in Lake Minnetonka anytime soon.
Mississippi, the Ship Island sea serpent.
Another
Lying
snake.
just a few miles off the coast of Mississippi is Ship Island, the site of two extremely detailed encounters with a sea serpent from back in July of 1908. In the first, a ship was sitting in completely calm waters near the island when all of a sudden their small boat began to rock back and forth, seemingly all by itself. The ship's crew ran out on deck to see what had caused the disturbance, and there, 40 yards from the boat, was a massive sea serpent over 100 feet in
Oops,
length.
all
The
snakes.
snake was using its tail like a propeller, whipping it through the water and circling the boat for 20 minutes straight. And strangely, the crew detected an air of curiosity around the serpent. It didn't seem to be threatening them at all. It almost seemed like it was just watching them as they were watching it. So naturally, the men
Snake go
concluded
vision.
that this
Doo,
must
doo,
be a
doo,
young
doo, doo,
sea
doo.
serpent that had simply lost its way. Eventually, though, the ship's cook came
Snake
out
go
on deck with
vision.
a bunch of coffee cups, and when he saw the monster, he was so shocked that he dropped the cups right onto the deck, and the noise of the smashing
Snake
cups
go
scared the
vision.
monster, and
I'm really
off it
hoping
went,
my home
speeding
state
out
does
of
not
sight.
have a snake.
And then, a couple days later,
kind of hoping
the local
Missouri doesn't
papers
have a snake.
printed Another
I kind of
encounter
hope.
with the
I
sea
hope your
serpent.
home state doesn't have a
This time,
snake
a
either,
small party
Cosby.
of
I'm
men
sorry.
were fishing off the coast of Ship Island when, once again, the great beast appeared, this time swimming directly at the fisherman's boat.
Oops, all
The men
snakes.
decided to try and capture the monster, so they
Oops,
climbed into
all
a
snakes.
smaller skiff and they started rowing in the direction of the serpent. And as they got closer, the oarmen tried to pull up alongside the monster, but they miscalculated and accidentally just crashed right into it. The serpent recoiled, seemingly in pain, and one of the fishermen took the opportunity to drive a harpoon deep into its side.
That just seems mean.
So, of course, the sea serpent
You're just
took
hurting
off
the little
and it
baby, I'm
dashed
sorry.
away for open sea, towing the small boat behind it. And strangely, as the serpent pulled the boat along, the men on board noticed a large collection of sea animals trying to take bites out of the monster. Large sharks and turtles were nipping at the serpent as it tried to escape the boat. The men quickly realized that they were in trouble, so they reached out and they cut the harpoon line before the serpent could pull them underwater, and that was that. As far as I'm aware, at least, the monster was never seen again.
Missouri,
Woo!
Cat-Eyed Jack.
Ah, yes,
Over
finally.
20 different people in Mexico, Missouri claim
Oh,
to
I've been
see
to Mexico.
a 10-foot-tall man
Missouri.
dressed in all black with the glittering eyes of a cat back in December of 1883.
So
Cat-Eyed Jack, as I've decided to call him,
that's a
would
supervillain.
strut around town at night with his head bowed in an abstracted way, whatever that means, and he would glare at the locals with his tiny animalistic eyes. And sometimes he'd peer into the buggies of passing travelers, and sometimes he'd be sitting upright on a fence with his head bowed as if meditating. And one man even watched him wade through knee-deep mud before he disappeared into the nearby woods. Search parties were sent out trying to hunt down the specter, and Some people theorize that maybe Jack was an escaped asylum patient, but eventually the sightings just dried up with no real resolution.
So just a really tall dude
Isn't
with
it kinda
creepy
crazy
eyes.
how many stories there are of 10-foot tall figures in black scaring people at night in small towns? Like, why are there so many cryptids of this particular genre?
At least it's not a snake.
The Centerville Ghost.
And speaking of, the Centerville Ghost from Butte, Montana is another cryptid that is basically just a figure in black walking around at night scaring people. Except this time with a little extra flair. The very first time that this ghost was encountered was in March of 1901 when a couple of men were walking home from a concert late at night. And as they walked through the streets, they witnessed a figure dressed in black turn out from an alleyway and start walking down the town's streetcar tracks. And at first, the men paid no attention to the figure. They just assumed
So far,
that it
I'm
was
following
some
you.
woman walking through the streets just as they were. But then the figure stopped at the top of a hill and it waited. And as the men approached, the figure stepped in front of them and it threw back its black veil and it revealed a horribly disfigured face illuminated by blue streaks of sulfur.
Okay, that sounds like just a guy who has a skin condition.
The figure let loose an ear-splitting screech, turned, and hustled away into the night. 3 days later,
Creepy weird
another
dude, gotcha.
story hit the local papers. This time, a miner was walking home around.
For a second there, I thought you meant like a child.
A mysterious figure dressed in black stepped out directly into his path. The miner moved to the left and to the right, trying to walk around the specter, but each time it refused to let him by. At first, the miner wanted to run, but strangely, he found himself glued in place, unable to move, forced to watch as the shrouded figure opened its hand to reveal a horrible grinning skull.
Ooh, I like that flare you got there, though.
Then with the other hand, the figure threw back its veil, and there again was that mangled, disgusting face.
Yeah, this looks like a nice, good villain.
With another
good
shriek,
villain.
the monster
Skulls,
disappeared into the night,
shrieking,
leaving the poor miner absolutely terrified.
Weird, distorted faces.
There, the ghost was off to the races. Many, many more sightings were reported. People were fainting in the street and falling down, trying to run away from the ghost with its horrible blue phosphorescent face. And eventually, as usual, ghost hunting parties were assembled to try and flush out the phantom, but even then, the monster couldn't be stopped. On March 10th, a group of 10 or 12 young men marched into the streets of Butte looking to capture the ghost, only to wind up running for their lives because the ghost appeared at the top of a hill and came shrieking down at them.
This just sounds like a nice supervillain. This sounds like a supervillain that a pulp superhero would fight yet again.
Follow the ghost. And this is where things get really weird. The two young men tailed the phantom all the way to a dilapidated cabin on the edge of town, but then when they went inside, the ghost ambushed them and punched them in the head, I guess, and knocked them out cold. Later, after waking up, the boys recounted the two blue burning balls of fire that the ghost had in place of eyes. Before long, word began to spread that a punch from the ghost's phosphorescent fist felt like a kick from a mule or a hook from a champion boxer. And if that's not
okay, I like this guy. He's got firepower, super strength.
In the head by the ghost, and a couple of guys said that they shot the phantom point blank in the chest with shotguns to no effect. And one time, the ghost supposedly kidnapped a lady and then tied her to a post and sat down next to the woman and smoked a cigarette with her.
I love this guy.
And then it untied her and let her go.
This is the kind of supervillain that I like.
Chasing a woman with a baby through the street at night, and the woman tripped and fell down, and the ghost actually stopped and helped the woman up, and then picked up the baby and gave it to the woman.
That's a nice
So I guess
supervillain,
the
community-minded
specter has a good
supervillain.
side. He's fine punching people in the head and kidnapping ladies, but he's not going to hurt a baby. But even with all that excitement, surprisingly, this legend too eventually faded away. People began to talk about the ghost less and less, and as this paper put it, there is no more effectual way to lay the ghost than to stop making a sensation over it. And so
I like
over
this ghost
time,
story.
the ghost sightings just dried up. People still had theories about where the ghost came from. Like, apparently one guy claimed that he was the ghost in a local saloon, and some people blamed the ghost on a local homeless morphine addict named Fighting Steve, who lived in a gulch just outside of town.
Fighting
Maybe I should do a
Steve.
video on Fighting Steve one day. But ultimately, the mystery
Fighting
went
Steve.
unsolved, and today the story of the Centerville ghost is virtually unknown, which is a shame because this one really, really deserves more attention. Like, genuinely, I left out so much of this story.
Yeah, the
This
Centerville
entry could've been,
ghost
like,
needs a movie
25
now.
minutes long.
We need a scene where he's just tying a woman to a post and smoking
the
with her.
Springs Mermaid.
That's
All right,
good
that
shit
last
right there.
one was pretty hefty. So how about we keep things simple for Nebraska? In September of 1921, there was a mermaid discovered in a small pond near Hastings,
Mermaid, you say?
Nebraska, which caused great excitement among the vicinity's female population. Many of the wives of this community have forbidden their husbands to hunt ducks on this lake.
That's it?
The Nevada Nightmare.
Okay.
You know, thus far, we have mostly stayed away from a very common genre of cryptid, and that is the dead cryptid. This is when somebody finds the body of some horrible-looking thing, and then they run into town going, "Holy cow, look at this crazy monster corpse I just found." Nevada provides a fantastic example. In July
What is the?
of
Can we see a
1906,
dead picture of
couple
this
guys
dead
came
thing?
into Carson, Nevada, saying that they had found the corpse of some kind of monster.
Can I see the
up on
picture?
nearby Mount Davidson. The monster looked like a combination of a Chinese devil and a nightmare. It had a
Okay.
head like a human being with nose, mouth, and eyes, but no body. And the monster also had a perpetually grinning mouth.
Can
full
I
of
see a picture
60
of this
teeth,
thing?
And it had legs like a frog and wings like a bat. I don't know about you guys, but that description sounds to me like a human head with bat wings and frog legs that was grinning super wide. I don't know what else they could possibly be describing there. That's the Nevada
Can I see a
nightmare.
picture?
New Hampshire.
Oh, I don't get a picture.
The Warren Warlock.
Okay, I am stretching the definition of cryptid very thin with this entry. Like,
Okay, I'm getting a little tired, and my fingies are starting to hurt. Would you like me to skip to your home state, Cosby? My fingers are starting to hurt a little. Would you like me to skip to your home state? Or do you just want me to get to your home state when we get there? It's SC, South Carolina, right? So this is... I love figuring... Okay, we're going to take a... Is there any way for me to figure out how to find which states are states? I love being able to just... Okay, so... New Jersey...
So the zigzag pattern that witnesses reported was the shoemaker wobbling down the street on his bike, and then when he saw somebody, he would hide, thus creating the illusion that he had disappeared into thin air. If I'm being honest, I kind of don't believe that any of that actually happened, but it's funny, so I'm putting it in the video.
New Mexico. The Blank-Faced Monster.
In October of 19... All that is, though, this is actually another cryptid where we seem to have a definite explanation. Just a few days after the initial monster sightings were reported, police actually spotted
Carolina, the literal devil.
in June of 1879, a fishing captain shot
Tuskman.
Okay, I
As
want to hear
much
about the
as I
flying
love
Tuskman.
the cryptid stories that go on for weeks and have dozens of supposed sightings, I also have a special soft spot in my heart for the monsters that just showed up one time in a brief article in one newspaper and then disappeared forever. Just a little tiny blip in the What a ripoff.
Oregon, Medford Schmooze.
Back in 1984, the Center for UFO Studies newsletter printed a story that they had received in the mail. In this story, a woman recalls driving home in 1953 through some wooded foothills near Medford, Oregon, along with her husband and 12-year-old daughter. As the trio drove through the forest, they suddenly noticed 3 creatures on the side of the road. So they stopped the car and watched as the creatures seemed to glide across the road and disappear into the woods on the other side. This all happened. The dog again said, "Good morning," and then it evaporated in a wisp of green vapor. Dozens of cops soon hit the streets looking to hunt down the phantom dog, but as far as I can tell, they never found that ghostly Newfie again.
Rhode Island, the Watchog Monster.
In July of 1956, a bunch of kids at a summer camp in Charlestown, Rhode Island, reported seeing the Watchog Monster. Every single state, and knives.
Okay,
And
there
I
we
just
go.
hope that that poor house cat made it out of that camp in one piece, because that is clearly what this monster was.
South Carolina, the Palmetto Creek Monster.
So one thing that I've learned while doing research for this project is that pretty much every single state has Bigfoot stories. Even way before the term Bigfoot was even commonplace, you can find accounts from all across the country of people running into 7-foot-tall men covered with hair. But in addition to those run-of-the-mill Sasquatch tales, most states also have what I would call advanced Bigfoot cases. These are accounts where the monster is very similar.
Oh, you've
to
heard of this
Bigfoot,
one?
just with a couple of twists.
Interesting.
The Palmetto Creek Monster in South Carolina is a fantastic example. In July of 1892, many people near Palmetto Creek reported seeing a large, hairy figure that looked like a gigantic ape. So pretty much just Bigfoot, right? Except this monster also had flippers and a scaly back like an alligator.
Oh, interesting.
So there you go. In my opinion, those small changes separate this beast just enough from regular old Bigfoot for it to be a legally distinct monster. This is a separate South Carolina specific cryptid. It's not Sasquatch. It's the Palmetto Creek Monster.
South Dakota, the Big Muddy Monster.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, the viewers, would you like something funny, a national anthem, or something cute to sign us off? Because my fingers are starting to hurt real bad. My hand is starting to hurt real wicked bad. This has been Weird Wednesday again, and I'd like to thank you for coming. If you have any weird, unusual, or strange things you want me to react to, send them my way, and I'll give it a try. So yeah, Weird Wednesday. It's weird Wednesday. Weird Wednesday. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. It means the world to me that people come to these streams, even if it's just 1 or 2 or 3 people. My fingers. I'm gonna have to lay down. So yeah, tomorrow, I don't know what I'm gonna stream. Friday and Saturday, I'm probably gonna be too damn busy to stream. So yeah, sorry about that. Goodbye, Ferret JoJo's.